Hi everybody, Courtney here to do a little frugal chat with you on how not to get to financial independence. I've thought a lot about how I have talked to you all many times about how we got to financial independence, but there's a lot of little intricacies that I see when I'm coaching people or helping people. I just do that voluntarily. I do have a service and I have actually been through financial coaching school, but honestly, I'm at a point in my life where I don't want to work outside of our business. So these are things I encounter a lot or I see with people when they come to me for financial help. So if you like this kind of content, please like and subscribe. So how to not get to financial independence. The first one I added today, I actually did this video twice last week and had to get rid of it. And if you hear that noise in the background, it's my horse playing with his food bucket. Is to not mind the gap, is to just continue to be, the gap is the difference between what you make and what you spend. So when you're spending more than what you make, or you're spending up to what you make, and if you're not minding the gap and you create habits that keep the gap closed. So what that might look like is ordering DoorDash too much, going out to shop and buy clothes, or shopping too much, creating habits that are costly, going out to eat too much. Now, I want to say I'm not against doing any of these things, but a lot of times the gap gets filled with those things to meet them. So, for instance, if some people on average are spending $160 to $200 a week on things like DoorDash or eating out, and I don't have a problem with that if you can afford it. But if you can't, that might be an area where you're filling in the gap with habits that you don't even realize are, just draining your pocketbook. I have a family member that works in delivery and is oftentimes running into TJ Maxx when they get bored, or Walmart, and buying little things here and there that are probably depleting their gap, their difference between their earning and what they have to spend. So there's nothing wrong with spending money on things that you need or even your wants, but you have to budget for those. The next one, number 2, is to blame others for your circumstances, like the government or the economy. The fact is, that may be the case. The economy may be in the tank. Inflation is high. Wages aren't keeping up with inflation. Housing is high. These things are all true. But when we're focused on blaming others or circumstances beyond our control, we're spending our energy focusing on what we do not have control of. And instead of thinking about, where is my control, right? What can I do that's going to help me? Can I come up with a creative housing solution? Can I make more money? Just being mindful that I don't have control over what the government's doing other than to vote, right? Or to show up to city board meetings. I went to a city board meeting last night, but I do have control over how much I work, how much I spend, where I choose to live, what kind of car I drive. I have control over all of those things. The next one is to think you deserve more. A sense of entitlement of, I need to earn this, and I'm not going to do a job for less than this. If the job pays blank, it's better to have a job that pays that than to not work at all. And so sometimes we get to where we think we deserve, or we see someone and we're like, oh, all the billionaires, they stink, they suck, or all the people with all the money, they're the problem. The fact is, most people want to earn enough money to be well off and comfortable and have security. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with being wealthy. And however, sometimes we just have to work. There have been times in my life where I just needed enough money to pay the bills. There was one time, and sometimes I wasn't even able to make enough money to pay the bills, but the gap was in the negative. So an example of that would be back in 2003, I believe it was, or 2002. My ex-husband and I were house poor. We built more house than we could afford. It ended up costing a lot more than our budget. And we sat down and we looked at everything we were spending. We tracked our spending for a little bit. We got out our credit card statements and our bank accounts, and we realized that our spending was $1,400 a month more than what we were bringing in. So I was already working part-time, so I took on another part-time job making $800 a month. That didn't give me $1,400. And my ex-husband took on side work, making up the difference, doing computer repair. Sometimes we just have to go to work and figure it out and stop the bleeding or plug the holes in the boat, right? Until we can figure out more. So for us, what that meant was stopping the bleeding or the hemorrhaging, right? It didn't stop the bleeding completely. It stopped the hemorrhaging just to get on level playing field so that things weren't getting worse and worse. We weren't continuing to put groceries on our credit card and then let interest go up on those. But that allowed us some time to figure out a plan. And that plan for us meant selling our house and buying a much less expensive house. And that was really scary because we had a house that we loved, but that we designed and everything, and we did sell it, and we moved into an older home that needed full remodeling, which we ended up doing ourselves. But the stress relief that gave us, it cut our house payment in half, and we were able to pay off those debts with the remainder that we got from that equity. So sometimes you just have to stop the bleeding, go to work, do what you can, make what you can. Number 4 is you believe that you don't need to increase your income. You think that you're going to get to financial independence on a low income with no changes. I hear this all the time. How can I realistically be financially independent on a low or middle class income? I do know people that have done this. So first of all, most of the time you're going to need to increase your income. And over time, most people do. Let's be honest. You get raises, you earn more experience, you get more training, and you start to make more income. So a lot of times people who are starting out at a middle class income, a teacher, I have a friend who works he's not an engineer, but he does something in that field. He has just been putting his 10 to 15% every year since he was in his 20s, he's in his 50s now, into his 401k, and that has grown to where he is a millionaire. It was just something he was told to do, and he did it, and that has worked out for him. So that alone will get you there in a decent amount of time. If you combine that with no debt and getting out of debt, paying off your house, by the time you hit 55, you are very likely going to be able to retire if you have lived within your means, you don't have any debt, you pay your house off, and you've just been sticking away that money every year. There's a rule of 55 that you can retire at 55 if you leave your job without penalty. So don't check me on that on your certain circumstances, because things do apply. It's usually 59 and a half, but there are some caveats to that. So a lot of times you just have to increase your income. If you have no gap between what you earn and what you spend, you're going to very likely have to increase your income and get out of debt. And that's one thing that I did. I worked more and I ended up eventually making more. Number 5 is don't problem solve. When I was on BiggerPockets Money, I had talked about how sometimes my parents would babysit for me. And man, some people came after me, well, you had help. Or the fact that I got a small inheritance when I was younger, and I used that to help put my ex-husband through college. Most of the time we have inflection points in our life, but even when we don't, we have to problem solve. So for me, what that looked like, some examples would be when I was very young and had small children at home, on the weekends, I would clean other people's houses. On a Saturday, I would go clean a house and make like $100, and that would help with our groceries for the week. When the kids got a little older in the summer, I would keep other people's children with me, like their friends, while they worked, and that would help me have some income myself and not leave my children and have to pay childcare for 3 little boys. So there are things you can do. I also ended up doing a house sitting service for a while where I would go do deliveries for people, check on their plants while they were on vacation, check on their cats, change their cat litter, feed their animals, things like that. So there's ways that we can now, there's so many side hustles now that we can do, but we have to problem solve. Okay, I work a 40-hour week and I have kids. What can I do? Y'all, I'm not saying you should do this, but I see this all the time. I see mamas out there with their kids in the car delivering food. Yeah, I've seen it all. Not saying that's good, but I admire that ingenuity For sure. The next one, number 6, is you want to keep upgrading. You always have to have the newest and the best car, the best phone, the newest trends in fashion, the best clothes. The truth is, like, I'm not really a trendy person. I don't like to draw attention to myself. I tried on a pair of boots the other day and at Walmart, and they were really cute, but I was like, yeah, these are too heavy and clunky. I don't think I would like them. But I took a picture of them and I put them up on Google Images to find similar ones, because I thought if I found a lightweight pair, I might like these. And do you know there were similar ones that looked identical for $144 versus $30 at Walmart? Now, granted, it was a trendy piece. I'm probably not going to wear that for 4 seasons, right? So spending $30 on something that's trendy makes more sense to me than $144 on something that would be out of style. And I don't really care. I go for more classics anyway. I am filming this on an iPhone 11 that I paid $350 for through Walmart. That's the most expensive phone I have ever had. I do not ever go into debt and have payments on anything. Once I got out of debt, it took me 2 times to learn this, but eventually when I got out of debt completely, I just quit getting in debt. In my mid 40s or early 40s, I decided I'm just going to quit getting into debt. And the last debt I had was when I was 45 and I'm 52. I paid that off. It was a car. And yeah, you just have to learn to problem solve. With childcare, when my kids got older, I worked during the day when they were at school, and then on the weekends, they would go to their dad's every other weekend. I would go and teach workshops on the weekends, and I did that for years. And then I took the 2 weekends my kids were home off with them, and that was the only 2 weekends I had off during that time. Sometimes we have to put our head down and make hard choices for a time. So number 7 is to be brand conscious. Again, that kind of goes with upgrading. Do you feel like you need to have the best in brands, the Gucci, the Coach, and all that? There's nothing wrong with that. You can buy them used sometimes. But one thing I will say, like with cars, so I have a Honda. We have always done Hondas. We have a Honda, a Chevy, and another Honda. And I went and I was looking at cars, and I had saved the money to buy a new car. And I had enough to buy a slightly used Volvo SUV. And I really love Volvos. I've had older ones. We've had quite a few in the past. But one thing I know about those is the cost of ownership is very high. And when I looked at the cost of ownership of that and of the repairs and the convenience of getting the Volvo repaired, I decided that wasn't a good financial decision for me. So some people really value their cars, but if you value your cars, you may have to give up in another area if you're trying to reach financial independence. And I would say probably don't have those fancy cars until you've reached those financial goals. The number 1 is to believe that frugal is cheap. A lot of people feel like being frugal makes them feel like they're being cheap, and that feels embarrassing or, I don't know, dirty to them for some reason. Like, being frugal does not mean being cheap. Like, we still buy toilet paper. Some of the cheap people out there, they're using wash rags. I know that just boggles my mind, and please don't come at me in the comments. It's just, that's not for me. Not going to do it. But there are other areas, like we use cloth napkins. We don't upgrade our furniture very often, but like when we did go buy a couch, after years of having Craigslist couches and hand-me-down couches and one cheap couch, we finally did spend like $2,200 on a couch, but we saved up and paid cash for it. We could have purchased an $8,000 couch. We didn't do that. We did buy a quality couch that would last us a long time, and we don't upgrade every time our fancy changes. The next thing would be, and I would say, we don't go for always the cheap option. We go for, we're frugal where it matters, like on the groceries and things like that. We're frugal where it matters. Like today I went in the health food store, and almond milk at the health food store was like $4.49 for a small container, and at Walmart, I don't remember what I paid, but it was substantially less. I can get the off-brand for like $1.90, so I did not buy it at the health food store. I'm sorry. I am going to be frugal. If I can get the same thing for less, I'm going to do it. Never be content. Number 9, never be content. So I'm a big believer that God doesn't give us more when we can't handle it. And then if we are blessed, let's say you win the lottery and you haven't learned to manage your $30,000 a year income, you're probably going to go broke. 90% of people or something crazy like that, they blow through all of that money in like the first, couple of years, and 5 years later, they're back to their baseline. If we can't manage what we have and we're not grateful for what we have, why would God, the universe, give us more? And if it did by chance, we're probably not going to hold on to it if we don't have some kind of humility and understanding about being grateful. I'm grateful for this beautiful day. I'm grateful for my modest home. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful. I love this shirt. It came from Walmart. I think I paid $12 for it. I'm grateful for all of the things that I have. If I am fortunate enough to be given more, I will be grateful for that. But I don't feel like I just deserve things because I exist, right? That also goes to entitlement, to learn to be content with what you have. Count your blessings, and that abundance begets more abundance. All right. Comparing yourself to others. So comparing yourself to others is the thief of joy. That's number 10. And again, it just goes back to practicing contentment, not having to upgrade, not being brand conscious. When you're constantly comparing yourself to others, especially when you watch like all these shows like Home and Garden TV, I've enjoyed those myself in the past, but also know that like if you have a really trendy home and you always feel like you have to upgrade to the next new thing, you're very likely going to feel dissatisfied when you're watching those shows, and you're going to feel like you're not keeping up. Just don't compare yourself to other people, because a lot of people who look rich, I have a family member who drives like and I'm not picking on Range Rover drivers, but she drives a pretty new Range Rover. The car literally, it sinks down when you get in it so you can get in easier. And it's like $100,000 car, and they are having financial troubles. Like, that just boggles my mind. And she was talking about that they were putting in countertops in a bathroom and it was like $10,000. And I'm just like, why? Like, if I try to keep up with that, and I could financially keep up with that, like, we wouldn't have any wealth. We wouldn't have any money in the bank because it would all be in my car and my countertops. That does not make sense to me. The next thing is don't learn more, to quit learning. Number 11, you always have to, when you have money and you have to manage it, you always have to keep learning. This month alone, I've been studying the whole Medicare thing. My husband's 65, and like, I've learned that there's these penalties when you make a certain amount of money. They look back 2 years. I did not know that. That's going to impact our financial planning for the next 2 years, where maybe like we have the Airbnb. Well, maybe I don't need to be running the Airbnb, making more money if we're going to get impacted with an extra $500 a month on his medical insurance. So it's just like constantly learning. The rules are always changing. The government's changing the way that we do taxes, Medicare, health insurance. And if we're not learning about things, we're going to fall behind. So I recently listened to several hours of podcast on Medicare. It was like watching water drip. It was so boring, but I needed to know that. Like, I look at that as like, that's my job. I can save us money by learning these things. Potentially the savings is about $3,600 a year. So if I were getting paid $20 an hour, that's like what, 18, I don't know, 180 hours worth of work or something like that. So you have to kind of think in terms of not just what I make, but what am I saving? And so by learning about how to do things. The next one, number 12 is always feeling like you wait till the time is right. I hear this a lot with people who feel like they just are making enough money to survive and there's nothing extra. When the inflection points hit, when you get that new job, when you get that little inheritance or that tax return, if you don't have a plan for it, it's just going to be spent, okay? It's just going to go away. So you have to, instead of trying to wait till the time is right, wait till you have, I hear this a lot, there is no extra money for me to budget. There is no extra money for me to save. Well, if you don't learn about having a mindset for savings, then when those things happen, those changes happen, you're not going to be able to make them. And you're probably missing a lot of opportunity, because the truth is there's opportunity all around you all the time to save more money, to earn more money. You're just choosing not to see it. You're choosing not to open your eyes to it. And of course, my neighbors decide now is a good time to shoot guns. Number 13, I think I may have gotten off of these. There's a total of 14, is who you marry. Marrying someone that is very superficial, that's very into all of the things we've talked about. They feel entitled. They blame others. They have to have the nicest, newest cars and clothes. Look, the fact is, I'm not saying support going to Walmart, but the fact is you can buy really nice clothes at the resale shop at Walmart. You can look cute from Walmart and Target or the resale shop. You do not have to have the newest $400, shirt or pants. Or if you do, I have a son who likes really high quality clothing, but he has a very, very limited wardrobe, and that boy wears his clothes over and over and over again. But he's very into like high-end clothes. He has a coat that he purchased on sale for $400, and it's a Pendleton, and he'll probably wear that thing for the next 40 years. If that's you, that's okay, as long as you're not buying like tons of that stuff. You don't have closets overflowing with it. So number 14 is to be afraid of hard work, especially for a time. And that just goes back to, there are times in our life, and my husband and I are struggling with this right now, where you just have to put your head down and do the work. And I know that there's this whole, like, I see it on the memes, I hear it with some of my kids, 2 of my kids. Sometimes, there's work-life balance, and I think that's so important, and we should not sacrifice our mental health, and we definitely need a work-life balance. But there are times when we've gotten ourselves into a bunch of debt, or maybe we want to buy a house, or we want to, save that emergency fund. There are times where we have to put our head down and work hard. Right now, my husband and I have gotten a ton of business, and our plan was to retire in about 3 to 4 years. And well, I was going to wait to retire till I was 56, and I'm 52. So 4 years. And my husband would have been, I'm trying to do the math there, 56, 68. Okay. Because we have, or maybe he would have been a little older than that anyway. At any rate, all this business we have, we took it. We've taken what's come to us, because it's going to allow us to reach our goals so much faster. And we are, it's about 6 months worth of really, really hard work, like 2 years worth of work in a 6-month period. We have already exceeded our goals. We've already met our goal for 2 years in this year because of all the work. Sometimes you just have to say, I'm going to work really hard for a time, but I see an end in sight. It doesn't mean you don't have any fun. It doesn't mean you don't take a day off. It just means you recognize that the majority of your time and energy for a season is going to go into working hard and getting ahead. It doesn't mean it's forever. So I hope this has been helpful. This has been how not to get to financial independence, or as you probably figured out, how to get to FI. And what does financial independence mean? It means that you have enough money to live on the rest of your life without ever working again. So for someone our age, I'm 52, my husband is 65. For someone our age, what that means is Social Security and pension. If you have a pension, you subtract that out. So if you need $100,000 a year, or let's say $50,000 a year, and you've got $40,000 in Social Security and pension, 20 times 25, I think that's 500,000. I don't know for sure, y'all. I'm sorry. I think it's 500,000. You would need $500,000 saved in order to live for the rest of your life, because you would take 4% off of that. So I don't want to go too much into the 4% rule. You can look it up. That seems not doable to a lot of people, and it didn't seem doable to me when I was a single mom. But what I did know was, if I paid off all my debt and I made my needs few, not my means, my needs few, that if I had to live off of Social Security and a small amount of savings, I could. When I met my husband, I had $94,000 in my 401k, and I was getting close to being debt free, and I had an emergency fund. And when we got married, I had been putting a little bit extra in my 401k on the regular. I had paid off all my debt, and I had built up a 1-year emergency fund. I knew that I would be in a lot better place than if I didn't do that. I did not even know what financial independence was, but I was well on my way because I had a plan. So I hope this has been helpful to you. Thank you so much for sticking with me. This has been a long video. I appreciate you. Bye-bye.